be seated. Welcome, brothers and sisters. We're so grateful to have you here as we celebrate Parker and Chloe. What a beautiful sign of support and love. In our church, we often call each other brothers and sisters, and I think that's very appropriate today as we're here to celebrate the Stott family. I want to recognize President Brandon Ogden here with us on the stand, along with President Plowman. My name is Greg Ward. I'll be conducting today. We had, prior to this meeting, a family prayer, and that was led by Gary Stott. I also want to recognize Dale Hewish as our organist and pianist today, and also Sister Maren Hansen and Shay Hogel will be conducting for us today. We'll begin by singing Nearer My God to Thee, hymn number 100, after which I'll have our invocation by Brother Jeremy Wilson.
Heavenly Father, we're gathered here to celebrate the lives of Chloe and Parker. It's not our desire to be here under these circumstances. We miss them. We miss them dearly. But we must gather and we must be here. And if we're here, I ask that thy Spirit also be here. Be here to bless this community of friends, families, and people that knew, and that know Chloe and Parker. Bless that that they'll be comforted and that they'll remember the touch points that touched them, and their loved ones and those they knew. And we ask that those honored to share their messages today are blessed with the ability to have the strength to say what they are impressed to say and to comfort them. We love thee and we recognize thy presence in our lives, and please help us through this trial with thy comfort. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you, Jeremy, for inviting the Spirit to be here with us today. We will continue and we'll begin our program today. We'll first have a live sketch. We'll get to hear from Esty Wilson and Jake Toulson, sister and friend, in that order. We'll then have a collection of memories offered by Noah Cook, brother to Chloe, and Connor Stott, brother to Parker. We'll then have a musical number by Miley LeSueur, Be Still My Soul, accompanied by Carrie Thompson. We'll then hear further memories from Casey Stott, brother to Parker, and Perry Eggertson, sister to Chloe. We'll then be honored to hear remarks from Sister Kit Cook and Greg Stott, mother of Chloe and father of Parker. And we'll go to that point.
Hi. Okay, I'm just trying to understand the reality of the situation, which is that there are a lot of people here. I'm Esty, Chloe's oldest sister, and I'm very intimidated to be here today and to have the responsibility to walk you through Chloe's 24 years on this earth. I am grateful to know, however, that everyone in this giant room knows and loves Chloe, and with all of the stories and laughter that you could share about my baby sister, nothing will be missing from my message. As I tell her story, I want you to know how generous and empathetic she was, that she was passionate and driven, and finally, that she embodied love and light. On May 28th, 1999, Chloe Rose Cook was born and completed our family perfectly. At age 10 and 8, Noah and I were given the responsibility of helping our parents care for and love on this new baby. Between Noah and Perry, there is a 6-year age gap, so when Chloe arrived, Perry was gifted a built-in best friend. According to Perry, Chloe was her mama bear. She took care of her, stood up for her, and always made sure to nudge her when she should stick up for herself. Despite being 3 years younger than Perry, Chloe often acted as the older sister. Just the other day, Chloe overheard Perry and Chad, Perry's new husband, having a difference of opinion from the other room. Chloe felt the need to let Chad know that Perry was correct. Chloe helped Chad to realize that he was wrong and that Perry would always be right. Chloe had a special relationship with every member of the family, but especially with our dad, Sheldon. They were buddies and had similar hobbies, some of which were watching Project Runway together and baking. During many a holiday season, those two could be found in the kitchen absolutely perfecting their iced sugar cookies. When Chloe was 9, our dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. He battled the disease until Chloe was 16. This experience impacted her life, not only because it was her dad, but also, as she put it during his funeral, he was her best friend. Through all the pain she experienced from losing our dad and her close friend, she was able to form a level of generosity and empathy that went deeper than most others can feel. These attributes, generosity and empathy, came to define my sister. I have heard stories this week of people talking about when Chloe reached out to them at times when they were grieving the loss or the anniversary of a loss of a loved one. We found out this week that one of her client's sisters lost a baby, and the client called Chloe and wanted to give that sister a facial. Chloe invited the sister to Clover outside of regular business hours and pampered her. Chloe told this grieving mother that her sister had already paid for the service, Come to find out, it was Chloe who had taken care of everything. I have been comforted by my baby sister's tender touch while laying in her spa bed during times in my life when I needed a moment of peace, and I will never forget how an hour of silence with her could make me feel light. Chloe has always had the ability to know when comfort was needed and to give it freely. Chloe's journey into a career started early. She would tag along with Perry's babysitting jobs to make a buck. It was literally $1, because the deal was that for every $8 Perry made, Chloe made $1. Chloe had no interest in babysitting on her own, but she knew that she would at least be $2 richer if she hung out with Perry babysitting than if she sat at home and waited for Perry to return. After high school, Chloe moved to Utah to attend aesthetic school. She graduated from Acadia Spa and School of Aesthetics. Early on at Acadia, Chloe struggled with the amount of girls in each of her classes. In a low moment, she called my mom, Kit, to help her find a solution. They worked together and, with the director of the school, added Chloe to the night classes where she was more comfortable and then completed her schooling. Chloe was never afraid to speak up about her worries and needs. When she didn't like how things were working, she would find a better way. After making the situation work for her, she enjoyed it so much that she wanted to get a master's in aesthetics, which she did from Renaissance Academy. Initially, we questioned how this would go after she offered to wax Jeremy's nose and ended up waxing off half of his mustache, which left Jeremy without the beard he had been sporting for 5 years. However, she quickly found her footing and began to thrive in her new career. After school, she rented a salon suite in the River Bottoms in Provo, Utah, and got to work. It was here that she found her passion and drive in a career, and here that her brand, inspired by the nickname Parker had given her, Clover Skin, was born. In the early days, as she shared her brand, you could tell that she was passionate about helping people feel beautiful in their skin. In a post she shared on Instagram, Chloe wrote, "Being an esthetician has given me such a sense of accomplishment and purpose. I have become more empathetic, understanding, compassionate, and confident. Every person I have met through this career has touched my heart in a way I can't explain. Everyone has their own story and experience that I admire and respect. I am forever changed by my experiences and relationships. I love taking care of people. I care so deeply." Though she had her own space and was staying busy, she had bigger ideas on where to take her career. And the special thing about Chloe was that she never saw a reason to wait. She took her dreams, put them into a tangible vision, and then had the perfect partner in Parker to make them a reality. After only a year out of school, Chloe and Parker started looking for a location to build Clover Skin Bar. They found a spot in Linden, Utah, which was previously a call center. Parker tore out that call center and built Chloe's vision from the ground up. Clover Skin Bar was opened in May 2022. If you have been there before, you'll easily recall the orange fluted front desk. This is the statement piece as you walk in. Chloe knew this had to be there, and Parker built it with his own 2 hands out of the love for his Clover. Chloe was a source of comic relief in our family. She easily kept up with our dad's sarcastic and witty banter, razzed her older siblings, and could get away with saying things to my mom that I would never dream of, because she could do it in a way that was somehow funny and lighthearted. During the summer of my engagement to Jeremy, I lived at home with my sisters and my parents. My birthday fell on the few days that Mom and Dad were in Houston for a cancer treatment. And I got back home from work and found that the girls had made me a dozen perfectly decorated cupcakes, and later I found an impromptu music video of the baking process. It was basically a video of Perry doing some very creative camera work while 10-year-old Chloe lip-synced to Apologize by the influential American hip-hop performer Timbaland. It is my greatest wish to be able to show this video to you, but when I find it, I will put it on YouTube and send you the link. Chloe's fun nature made her a magnet for her nieces and nephews, Owen, Marlo, Harvey, Gus, Goldie, Louie, and Archie. Her love for them was endless. This October, Owen asked his Aunt Coco if she would be coming to Arizona for his baptism. Without hesitation, Chloe got online and booked tickets. She told my mom that at every important event in her nieces and nephews' lives, she wanted them to be able to turn around and see her there. Chloe was generous, and that generosity increased tenfold when she was with her nieces, nephews, and the babies of her dear friends. Anytime she was visiting with them, both Chloe and Parker would take the kids to Target and let them load up the cart with whatever they wanted, making the kids happy but putting the pressure on us parents to deliver at that same level. Last year, we were all together for Thanksgiving. When we were all together for Thanksgiving, Parker and Chloe coordinated a Santa visit with Parker as Santa Claus. I am not sure if Santa himself had been in that room, that the kids would have been more ecstatic. Our babies love Parker and Coco, and this is because of the love that they constantly showed each of them. From the moment Parker asked Chloe to be his girlfriend, they were inseparable. Every good thing about the two of them individually was magnified as their lives intertwined. Every memory I have, and I imagine that we all have of them together, is magical, hilarious, heartwarming, and full of joy. They were meant for each other, and they made sure that they never went a day without sharing their love with each other. So, a few years ago, when I learned what it meant to manifest, to do manifesting, I immediately had the thought, this is how my baby sister has lived her entire life. And as Greg said earlier this week, Parker and Chloe didn't even know what to be afraid of. They dreamed big, and every morning woke up with the intention to make those dreams come true. I know a lot of you are obsessed with Chloe and Parker, and I will spend the rest of my days loving them and loving the people in my life with all that I have in their honor.
Thank you, Esty. That was beautiful. Good morning, brothers and sisters. My name is Jake Toulson, and I had the privilege to be one of Parker's best friends. Greg asked me to share with you all his life sketch today, and I'm so excited to do it. Parker Benjamin Stott was born in Long Beach, California on January 10th, 1997. He's the oldest son of Greg and Jenny Stott and the older brother of Connor and Casey. Parker lived in California until he was 5 years old. And at that time, the family moved to be here in Gilbert, Arizona. Parker grew up in Gilbert, where he graduated from Highland High School in 2015. He was involved in many activities during high school. He played football as an offensive lineman, hung out with his friends, and mischief seemed to follow him wherever he went. After high school, Parker moved to Logan, Utah, where he attended Utah State University. After 1 year, his natural desire to help others led him to serve an LDS mission in Nicaragua. After his mission, Parker moved to Provo, Utah, where he attended Utah Valley University to study construction management. It was during this time that he met Chloe Rose Cook, and from that moment, they became inseparable. Parker and Chloe were married and sealed in the Gilbert, Arizona temple on May 11th, 2019. Together, Parker and Chloe purchased a house, and along with their dog Frank, created a home in Pleasant Grove, Utah. After years of experience in the commercial construction world, Parker fell in love with building custom homes. He developed his skills as a contractor and built several charming homes in the local area. He took those skills and built Chloe a beautiful storefront, Clover Skin Bar. This establishment became a cornerstone in the Utah skincare community. It was a channel for the Stotts to spread their love among those that were fortunate enough to know them. Parker enjoyed golfing. While I'm not sure he ever beat his grandpa Gary, he could definitely outdrive him and all of his brothers. Parker also enjoyed tackling DIY projects and taking care of Frank and their new puppy, Georgia. However, his greatest joy came from being surrounded by his friends and family. His top priority was spending time with and taking care of his loved ones. When I was asked by Greg to read the life sketch here today, I was excited. The more I thought about it, though, the more I realized that quote-unquote life sketch would not do justice in illustrating who Parker is. His impact can't be measured by a list of things that he accomplished on paper. His real impact and legacy is the love that he gave to everyone around him. He was truly a gentle giant. Parker wasn't polished, nor was he a big resume guy. He actually was a college dropout, but he didn't try to hide it. He owned who he was in his own self-deprecating way. There was nothing fake about him, and he always kept it real. Whatever he lacked in regards to a conventional path, he made up with an insane work ethic and motor. Everything wasn't easy all the time for him, but he always moved forward with a positive spirit. Whenever Parker was anxious or at a fork in the road when it came to making a big life decision, you could always tell. The way that you could tell is that he would completely lose himself in trying to help everyone around him. He always put others before himself. It was just a few weeks ago where he and Chloe showed up at my house in a Santa costume with presents for my kids. I didn't ask them to do this. That's just the type of people that they are. They found so much joy in serving and loving the people around them. Parker did take a lot of my money on the golf course, and that wasn't very nice. I'll never financially recover from that. But I just chalked it up to all the money that I owe him for the favors that he's done for me over the years. Borrowing his truck to help me move, fixing up my garage, teaching me how to smoke some wings on his Traeger, or barricading up the window in my basement with 2x4s because my wife is scared of the bad guys getting her, and consequently taking me to go look at a gun that I should buy. He would call me soft, but he was determined to make me a little more manly. He was my go-to guy whenever I was stuck and needed some help. He would drop anything at any time to come help his brother out. While I appreciated it, he made me look like a fool. My wife was constantly telling me to call Parker. Next thing you know, he's there fixing all of our problems. Our friendship had a lot of themes. We talked about everything, whether it was our love for sneakers, playing golf, late night Xbox with the boys. Side note, we just had to convince Chloe to let him play, always bribing her with whatever we could to get him on. Playing fantasy football or talking about our marriages. Most recently, we talked about becoming a father. I'll never forget the joy on Parker and Chloe's faces when they shared with us the news that they would soon be parents, and the excitement in their voices, thinking of the creative ways that they were going to tell their families over Christmas. Everyone who knew Parker loved him, and they knew Parker loved them. His smile was infectious, and his laugh was unforgettable. and his gentle heart will forever be cherished. He spent his whole life giving everything he had to the people he loved. There was no one he loved more than his sweet Chloe. Parker's Christ-like example of love and service is something that we can all learn from in a way that we can honor his legacy while we are here on earth. I've spent some time reflecting on our lives together and the friendship that we shared. I'm so grateful for a friend like Parker. Everyone needs a friend like Parker, but he's truly one of a kind. I can't fathom a life without him here, and I'm going to miss him so much. But I feel so lucky to know that I have the greatest guardian angel watching over me until the day where we're all reunited. I can't wait for that day. I love you, buddy. These things I share with you today, I do so in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Esty. Thanks, everyone, for being here today. And loving Chloe and Parker. I'm Noah Cook, Chloe's favorite and only brother. As an older brother, my natural instinct was to protect and make sure she was always okay. It became very clear from a young age that Chloe didn't need that. She was always so confident in herself. When I was 17 years old and Chloe was just 9, our dad was diagnosed with cancer. My parents had to travel often to treatments in Texas, and I was left in charge of Chloe and Perry. I remember one time, specifically, I brought little Chloe to the Highland varsity basketball game. She was sitting in the middle of the student section with me and my friends, cheering like she was one of the students. My dad made it a habit to call to check in on us to see how we were doing and stay connected. After he passed away, I tried to do that for Chloe. I always loved getting on the phone with her and talking about her business. It was so cool to hear how passionate she was about Clover. I was impressed that she had already found something that fulfilled her so much and that she was working so hard to make it successful. It was a bonus that she got to do that alongside Parker. Although Chloe is 8 years younger than me, I look up to her so much. When I first had the opportunity to see Clover, the skin bar, Chloe walked me through, showing me everything she and Parker had built together. Every single detail was so perfectly thought out. I loved when she walked us back to the snack area, where of course we found a luxury fridge filled with specialty snacks and drinks. I like to joke with Chloe about how she always did things over the top, but it was definitely one of the best things about her. She never did anything halfway. If Chloe put her mind to it, it was going to happen, and it was going to happen exactly how she envisioned it. I loved that my kids got to see Chloe accomplish her dreams. My boys were in awe of what Chloe built at Clover. During that same tour I got, and before Chloe gave each of them a facial, she gave them each a sample of her facial serums.
I'll never forget them looking up so intently at her as she explained how and when they should use it. Even a few weeks later, my 5-year-old Harvey was panicking before bed, trying to find that serum to put on his face like Chloe had taught him to. Chloe had a way of making everyone feel like the most important person. I saw this especially when she became an aunt. My kids have never doubted if their Aunt Coco loved them. She constantly made them feel like they were superstars. As SD had mentioned, she spared no expense, her and Parker, when it came to my kids. I often had to tell her to save her money and not to buy every single thing they wanted at Target. But the kids, they knew that she could never tell them no. It brought so much joy to her to be able to do that for them. This October, we had Parker and Chloe come stay with our 2 younger kids while we took our oldest, Owen, on a special birthday trip. We worried that Harvey would be sad he wasn't included in the trip, but that fear was gone quickly the second Parker and Chloe got there. It ended up being the opposite. Owen was debating if he really wanted to go on our trip because he thought Harvey and Goldie were going to have the better end of it. My favorite story from that weekend was that Chloe and Parker took the kids to the zoo trick-or-treat night, something Kels and I were never fun enough to do. Chloe thought there would be food there, but there wasn't. Instead, the kids ate candy for a couple hours and ran around having the times of their lives. She called us in a panic at 9 p.m., saying she was so sorry that they were up so late, but that she was feeding them burritos in the bathtub and they would be in bed soon. Chloe was the queen of celebrating. Whether that was Chloe and Parker celebrating their 3, 6, or 9-month anniversaries at a fancy restaurant, or when Chloe would DoorDash a mini cake from Sprouts to each kid on their birthday. I can only imagine how much that was costing her. She frequently requested pictures of the kids and acted like every single one was the cutest and best picture she had ever seen. Going through our family group message, she would sometimes send a picture, a selfie of her reaction to some of those pictures, and it's fun to look back at. When my daughter Goldie was born, Chloe was planning on coming out a few weeks later, but 3 days after the birth, she changed her flight to be there. She said she could not stand getting to hold, she said she couldn't stand not getting to hold her niece right away. She spent the weekend with us cleaning, taking care of our boys, and of course making us all feel so special. Just a month ago, Owen was baptized. I remember him asking Chloe to come, and without hesitation, she bought a flight right then and there for him. Chloe taught me to be present in the moment and not wait for an opportunity to give or serve somebody. She gave and loved so freely, and I really hope I can be more like that. Chloe loved Parker so much. From the moment she started telling us about him, we couldn't help but love him too. They were each other's biggest cheerleaders. I always loved getting a new video in the family group message from Chloe highlighting any updates from the beautiful custom homes Parker was working on at the time. As has already been mentioned by SD, Chloe and my dad had a special relationship. I often wondered how she would find someone who would measure up to him. I know without a doubt my dad would have loved Parker and the way he treated his little girl. I really wish I could have seen them meet on the other side. These last 10 days have been so difficult, although losing Chloe and Parker so suddenly was very different from when my dad passed away. My family and I have felt the same outpouring of love and prayers we experienced almost 9 years ago. Christ suffered so we can lean on him through our most difficult days while on this earth. I have an unshaken testimony that I will see them again. I'm so grateful Parker and Chloe are part of that family of mine forever. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
had a lot of friends. I'm Connor. I'm Parker's little brother. I'm the second favorite of his, and I've always accepted that. So, my older brother, Parker, was an incredible role model and the best big brother I could ask for. With just a 19-month age gap between us, we share countless experiences and cherish many memories together. When I was just 2 years old, I was determined to ride a bike because Parker did. He is my inspiration, and I didn't want to miss out on anything he was doing. Whether it was letting me sit next to him on the school bus or pedaling to school side by side next to him when we were old enough, Parker was always there for me. His protective nature assured my mom that I was in good hands always. As we grew older, Parker continued to be my guiding light. He introduced me to the world of high school football training when I was only in 7th grade. His support and mentorship was unwavering. Eventually, our bonds extended to the field where we had an incredible opportunity to play alongside each other my sophomore year and his senior year. Whenever I felt lost when I was on the field about where I should go or what I should do, I could just look to my right and Parker would be there to tell me. When I prepared to go on a mission, Parker's influence was immense. Even though he had a hard mission experience, he still encouraged me to go. And he stood by my side the whole time when I served. He stood by my side the whole time. And when I served, and when I came home early, he welcomed me home. When Parker got married to Chloe, my parents were naturally a little worried about their first son getting married, starting his next chapter in life. But after seeing what a great pair they were and how happy Parker was by the time I started dating my Chloe, they were already comfortable with accepting the fact that their boys were growing up and leaving the nest. Parker and Chloe continued to be amazing examples to me of how to have a happy marriage and life. And they were the blueprint example that me and Chloe try to follow. We were happy, they were happy, they were the biggest cheerleaders for each other, and they did everything possible to help each other achieve their dreams. They knew no limits. Parker was a dedicated individual, deeply committed to his craft. Especially when it came to Clover's Skin Bar, a project close to his heart. I received a call one day that he needed my help. Without hesitation, I boarded a plane, and we spent the next 2.5 days putting in almost 40 hours of work trying to master the art of drywall. I'll never forget these long days working together. But as we worked, we had many conversations that I'll never forget. I'll always treasure. But what I remember best was the moment Chloe walked in after a long day herself. She expressed her determination to work all 7 days of the week in order to make their dreams a reality. Chloe would do facials all day to earn the money they needed to buy the supplies and the material for the skin bar construction. Parker would tell her what he needed and how much it would cost. And by the end of the day, she would walk in and have that money for him to take to Home Depot. I'll never forget their unwavering dedication and perseverance to make their dreams a reality. There's so many things I could say about Parker and Chloe, but I narrowed it down to just 5 lessons. I've learned from them these have been whirling around my head the last few days. 1, Take the picture. Parker and Chloe captured so many beautiful memories, and we're so thankful to have to remember them by. 2, make the phone call. Parker was the best at checking in. On his way to and from work, running errands, chilling at home, he would always just call to say hi. Even though we lived in different states, Parker made sure to talk to me every single day. I'm so incredibly grateful for the constant communication we had. 3, just serve. Parker taught me that your time helping others is most important. I can't tell you how many projects he's helped friends, families, and neighbors with. And the best part is, you never had to ask. And before you knew it, he was always there with his tool belt ready to work. 4, laugh a lot. Parker had a great sense of humor, and he had the most infectious laugh. And when I think of Parker, I imagine him there with me, smiling and laughing. And 5, how to love 2 stinky, loud bulldogs that I now have to help with and take care of. But Frank was Parker's best bud. And they added George to the mix last Christmas. But when I get to play with those dogs now, I feel a lot closer to Parker and Chloe. And I don't care as much about their slobber and their fur. But I know that when I play with these dogs, that these are who they called their kids. And they love them so much. I love you, Parker. Thanks for being the best big brother. Till we meet again. Amen.
Be still, my soul. The Lord is on thy side. With patience bear thy cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide in every change. He faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best, thy heavenly friend, through thorny ways leads to a joyful end. Be still, my soul, thy God doth undertake to guide the future as he has with the past. Thy hope love's purest joys restored. Be still, my soul, when change and tears are past. Oh, safe and blessed, we shall meet at last. Oh, safe and blessed, we shall meet at last.
Hello, brothers and sisters. My name's Casey, and I'm glad Connor knew his place in our relationship of the brothers. Thank you, Miley. That was amazing. Parker and Chloe were two of my very best friends. I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with the two over the last couple years as I was living close to them. From late night dinners to Kong cones, ice cream. We just have so many great memories together. The last couple of days have been really difficult, but we've had time to figure out why it is that we love Parker and Chloe so much. And a lot of you guys are the reason. Over the last couple of days, I've just been thinking about 4 or 5 lessons that I learned from Parker and Chloe, to be fair. Parker was my big brother and paved the way for me and Connor to do the things that we want to do in this life. He dropped out of college, like Jake said, and that gave us all hope that my dad believes in us more than we knew. But lesson number 1 was to check up on your friends and to show up for people. Parker was always helping people. This week, I've heard so many stories about him showing up and doing work that the family wasn't prepared for, but Parker was. From Scott's Bread to Cole Warner, people saw Parker's progression through drywall. He was always patching things and fixing things or building walls. And he always knew how and when to show up. It seemed like every day, Parker would barge into my house, pounding on just about every wall until he pushed open the little office door and grabbed me and scared me. We could talk for hours about life, things he was stressing about, and Chloe, specifically how she yells at me the same way Miley does, or yells at him the same way Miley yells at me. Chloe would not settle for average, and Parker showed me that when showing up for your friends. Those conversations in that little office that mean nothing are what I'll miss the most. Lesson number 2. He taught me how to be a big brother, and now Connor is going to have to take on that role, and I'm sorry. But if you didn't know, I lived with Parker and Chloe for about 3 months. During that time, I was fully integrated in the Cook Stott family. From dinner to laundry, both of them took care of me. I never was hungry, and I always had clean clothes. Parker, from a very young age, picked on me and was so mean, but he always knew how to take care of me. He loved me for me, and we had a lot of fun together. our favorite thing to do is to borrow things from Connor. And if you know Connor, he doesn't like when we borrow things from him. He was always stirring the pot, starting family gossip, and sharing things with me. The other day, he walked into my bedroom, and he's like, "I have been looking for those shoes for a year now, and I had them." That's just our relationship. Parker taught me that family is who you choose, and not who you are placed with. And that's a really important lesson in being a big brother. Lesson number 3. Obsess over what you enjoy and what you love. We were golfing a couple weeks ago, and he pulled out his phone, and Chloe texted, "Where are you? Why is your location off?" That was super common. He loved to golf, and he was always striving for excellence. Noah Cook probably has more golf videos than he'd enjoy from Parker of what's wrong with my swing, but he had just obsessed over things. And Parker was obsessed with Chloe. She's all he thought about, and every path he took in life was because of her. It was because she expected greatness from Parker, and that's what he then expected for himself. So becoming obsessed with things isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's a good thing. And Parker was definitely obsessed. Lesson 4 is from Chloe. Just like Esty said, she said she never had a reason to wait. And I wrote that down. Don't fear failure. Chloe, while building Clover, never thought that it wouldn't work. She never thought that all this work was in vain, and that Clover could possibly fail. That's a mentality I need to adopt, because I look at things and I see real and I see there's no way this is going to work. But Chloe defied all odds and did whatever she wanted to do, and it always worked. So don't be afraid of failure and do not wait. Lastly, was just like Connor said, was to work hard and become a machine. During the building of Clover Skin, somehow I was called to be there every day. Parker would show up at my house and drag me out of my bed, and I just worked every night at that place. Some days I would block his phone number and do whatever it took to just be away. And he just taught me that some things can't be done without you. That you need to show up for others, and that I had to be there for him, and that money didn't matter. It's okay to do favors and just help where you can, because everybody needs a little help. I'm so grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my big brother, Parker. I'm grateful for an opportunity to live a life that you will be proud of, where he's on the other side of the veil cheering me on and loving me. I'm grateful for Chloe, her ability to light up a room and make anyone feel loved. And I'm grateful for all of you for being here for my family. You have no clue how much it means, especially to my dad. He is a people person. But Parker, I love you. Chloe, I love you. And I know one day I'll see them again. That is my testimony. That Jesus Christ lives, and all this will be okay because of him. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
I'm Perry, Chloe's sister, At times, I felt like I was famous by association because we would be at Swiss Days in Midway, and somebody would come up to us and say, "Are you Clover's skin? And this is your sister." And that happened so many times, and I hope it still happens. But I wanted to start today by talking about Chloe and I growing up together, just 3 years apart, and sharing a room for basically our entire childhood. I was just telling Chad and Parker the other day that I wish they could have known Chloe when she was little. From the beginning, she had incredible sarcasm and wit and made everyone laugh. She was headstrong and stubborn and giving and supportive. She was my best friend and at times my worst enemy. She knew me so well, and she knew my exact triggers and knew so well how to get under my skin. If anybody was wondering, I knew this girl was destined for stardom from the start. I really wish I could just stand up here with a highlight reel of the photo shoots and videos that we directed together, including the one that Esty talked about earlier. If you've been around long enough, you know that there was some really good content produced. And if you didn't have the pleasure of witnessing, just imagine Chloe, 6 or 7 years old, with her perfect round cheeks, in a banana costume, with black lipstick on a quilt, lounging in our front yard, reading vintage books that we had gotten from DI. This photo shoot, in our opinion, was going to blow people's minds once I posted it to my blog. Chloe was such a jokester. I was just telling my siblings a story yesterday about a time when my mom and dad took me and Chloe to Disney World. We had a really long day at the park, and on our way back to the hotel on the monorail, she fell asleep. So we didn't want to wake her up. My dad carried her all the way back to the hotel room. It was probably close to a mile. And Chloe was a dense 7-year-old. When we got back to the hotel room, my dad gently laid her down on the bed. And she just opened her eyes and said, "Just kidding." My dad was so pissed. Chloe was the most giving person, like the most giving person. There were a couple moments where I watched her give so freely that financially I wondered if she was going to survive. It was never transactional, and it was always so genuine. One time we were in DI with our cousins in Utah, and I remember Chloe went in prepared with $50 that she had gotten for her birthday. While we were shopping, she clued in on a girl who was looking for a wedding dress. And she came up to me so distraught, and she just said, "Perry, I need to give this money to her." And completely unprovoked, Chloe went up to the girl. She just said, "I want you to have this." And the look on the girl's face was priceless. As someone who is a tightwad when it comes to money, I remember waiting for Chloe to have regrets. But it never came, and she never regretted it. Fast forward to the last 5 years of friendship with Chloe, which means 5 years of friendship with Parker. I have never seen someone love their spouse harder than Chloe loved her Mr. Clover. When she first brought Parker around our family, she had absolutely no hesitation in showing our family how much she loved him. From someone who has always been hesitant to show public affection, Chloe was my icon when it came to relationships. She was constantly thinking about what she could do to ensure that it was her and Parker forever. I'm pretty sure they celebrated every anniversary in 1-month increments during the entire first year of them dating. And every month anniversary consisted of giving gifts and eating at Sundance. Chloe always smelled good. Just a couple months ago, Esty, Chloe, and I were on a sister's trip to Round Top, Texas. As Chloe and I were in the bathroom getting ready for bed, I watched her put on perfume after brushing her teeth. Thinking it was ridiculous, I teased her about wearing her perfume to bed. She was so confident, she just looked at me and said, "You don't like to smell good when you go to bed?" And I walked out of the bathroom thinking Chloe was most definitely right, and I felt dumb that I wasn't prioritizing smelling good for bed. Chloe made everything special. I will miss her dramatic flair with everything. She would prepare the most intricate meal on a Tuesday and call it a simple dinner. When I told her that I needed to plan a birthday party for Chad, 2 minutes later I had 10 different links for decorations, dessert recipes, and plasticware. A couple months after my wedding, Chloe told me about the vow renewal she wanted to plan for her and Parker's 10th anniversary. Basically, she was planning a second wedding, and she was going to make all of our weddings look stupid. It's tragic that the world will never get to see Chloe and Parker wedding part 2. It would have been equivalent to the royal wedding. She set the scene for me, and all I can say is that it was going to be over the top, emotional, there was going to be good food, and it was going to be really special. When I think of weddings, I'll never forget the way Chloe went above and beyond to make me feel special during my wedding week this last June. I'm so glad she and Parker were there. She planned my bachelorette party. She spent way too much on decorations that just went in the trash an hour later. And she made sure that I had everything so that I had zero stress the day of. On the morning of my wedding, Chloe, with the help of my sister and my mom, gave me a gift. And it had something old, new, borrowed, and blue, and everything had sentimental value. She also told me that my dad would be watching over me the entire day, and that he was really proud of me. She was so good at acting like my big sister, even though she was 3 years younger. A word that's been said multiple times today, and that I can't stop using to describe both Chloe and Parker, is cheerleader. When I would ask her, "What's new? What's going on?" her response would be something like, "Oh my gosh, Paris and Cole's baby Scotty is so handsome. He's so handsome, isn't he?" Or, "Guess what, guys? My Clover girls have full books this week, and they're absolutely crushing work lately." Or, "Did you see Learning with Kelsey Instagram has 55,000 followers? I'm so proud of her. She's so amazing." Or, "Look at this closet Parker built all on his own. He's so talented." I just want to let everybody know in this room, make it very clear, that if you were Chloe's friend, she told me about you. And she texted about you in our family group message, even if we didn't know you. She loved to love, and she was so proud of everybody she knew. She was so good at loving. Chloe and Parker were my perfect friends. I think a lot of people in this room would claim them as their best friends. I've lived down the street from them. I think I timed it once. It was less than 20 seconds for the last 2 years. And it has been my dream come true. I'm going to miss the car honks as Parker drives by, and the times when they would just invite themselves over when the lights were on. The four of us, me, Chad, Chloe, and Parker, we made a pact one time that we were going to be friends forever. Our kids were supposed to grow up together. Parker and I talked about starting a business together. We were supposed to end up living in Mapleton, Utah, on a compound with beautiful custom houses that Parker built for us. Not having them is going to be a giant hole in my life. They are unreplicatable, and they're one of a kind. The love they had for each other makes me want to be better, and I've heard that from everybody who I've talked to this week. Their combined humor was unmatched, and their banter and laughter was contagious. I'm so lucky that I get to say I was loved by Parker and Chloe. I feel like this is like my one chance to get to tell you guys everything that I love about them, or all the stories. But I have so much more to talk about. I have so many more stories to tell you about why they were the best people I know, and I don't want to ever stop talking about them. For the rest of forever, I want to talk about Chloe and Parker, and how they kept me laughing, and how they were the best cheerleading squad I could have ever asked for. I want to keep talking about them so I don't forget. So for everybody here and everybody listening, please don't ever hesitate to ask me why I miss my sister and why Parker was so special to me. They made such an impact on me, and they will be missed for the rest of forever until I get to hug them again. Every day I'm going to do my best to make them proud and follow all the lessons that we've been taught this week. I promise to give more freely and always be available to my friends and family and make it known how much I love those around me. Parker and Chloe forever. Amen.
This is huge, and I'm only mainly doing this is to say thank you and how much we love you. And I want to fill in a few spots. Chloe always wanting, if we passed any homeless people on the street or whatever, it's just like, can I give them $1? And if she had the dollar in her pocket, she would give it to him. But if she didn't, she would turn to myself or to Sheldon and said, can I please have $1? But then there was Perry. When we would go to Mexico with the kids, they would have to tell her, don't pet the dogs. So it's a lot of love in my kids. And then Perry and Chad, thank you for the most beautiful experience that weekend of your wedding. Connor and Casey were not there, but Jenny and Greg were with us. And it was so incredible that we were all together and that we had that to remember. And the story about Chloe quickly, when sweet Owen asked her, are you coming to my baptism? And her quickly making that flight on her phone. And then one night, I think it was the night before his baptism, or 2 nights before, Noah called me at about 7 and said, hey, Mom, will you pick up Chloe from the airport? And I go, yeah, she's coming here? I had no idea she was coming. And he said, yeah, she's coming for Owen's baptism. I said, yeah, okay, I'll pick him up. And whenever Noah calls at night, I'm basically thinking, what's wrong? And so then I said, what's wrong? And he said, Kelsey's having contractions, so we think we need to go to the hospital and see what's going on. And I said, okay, I'll pick her up, thinking Gateway. And so it got to be about 20 till, and I jumped up, 20 to 8, and I jumped up and went and brushed my teeth. And when I'm brushing my teeth, a text comes through from Chloe, and she's like, Mom, the pilot just announced we're landing in Phoenix. And I was like, wait, how do you mess up Gateway, Phoenix? And I said, okay, I'm sorry, I thought Gateway, I'll be there as soon as I can. And so then when I got over there and jumped in, I said, what happened? How did you mess that up? And she said, I was so excited that Owen asked me to go. And I wanted to show him I was doing it, and I wasn't paying attention. And I guess sometimes with Allegiant, they sometimes throw you to Phoenix, and if you're not paying attention, I guess you're going to Phoenix. And that's when she told me that she said, with any of these sweet grandkids, she said, Mom, if it's any event, I want them to know that when they turn around, they're going to see me sitting there. And just a generous kid. And I didn't know how much money she spent. I just knew they always looked good. Wrong airport. From the get-go on this, as horrific as it was, I'm so thankful for Jenny, mom to mom, and Greg was a big support guy, that it was with them, and that Jenny and I could hug each other and hold each other and just say, we want them to be back together again. And I'm sorry for those 4 days of crazy upside-down madness. But I appreciate that it was them. And as huge of a void as this is going to be, our comfort is knowing that they needed to be together and how much they love each other. And I'm really sorry for my grandchildren, because as you have heard, these two could not pour more love on these kids, these grandbabies. And I'm grateful for Connor and Casey, that they're just so loving. Connor's hugs, you're almost right there with Parker's, and I appreciate that. And Casey's big smile, yours is subtle, but Casey's big size, he just is so ray of sunshine. And Chloe too, as I call her, and Miley, you're both darling, and I'm so grateful that we have you. And I love my children so much. I am not a helicopter mom, and I hope they will testify to that. And they do big things, and I love each of them so much. And many of you always say to me in times like this, like with Sheldon, how are you doing this? How are you getting through this? So I felt like I should share that years ago, Chloe wasn't old, she was still under a year old. We had a young couple in our ward that tragically lost their toddler in their backyard with a freak accident. And Sheldon and I went to the service, and having a little baby, Perry was 3, just having this little baby, I was just horrified by this. And I've never really connected with people that said, I just had to go to the temple. I was that person that just, okay, we'll go for War Temple night, but we didn't even do that very often. But I felt very strongly to go to the temple because my mind and heart were so racked for this little family. And so thankfully, Sheldon, we had our mortgage company, so he said go, and he just stayed with Chloe and with Perry. And I went, and this little gentleman at the desk was just kind of looking at my card and looking at me, and I was going to miss that time slot of going to endowment. And he looked at me and he said, Sister, will you go do initiatory for us? And I hadn't done initiatory since I had done my own. And I said, okay, sure. And I went and I wept. I think you did 15 names in. And I just wept listening to that. Because when you're new married and just going in, it just goes right over you. And from that visit, I started going every week because it empowered me so much. And then my sweet aunt from Las Vegas, my Aunt Betty and my Uncle Boyd, my dad's next to oldest brother, she called me and she said, Kitrian, your mom just told me that you go to the temple every week. And they're very spiritually aware and gospel deep. And she said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "I just feel like with all those names, I'm having more friends on the other side. And I'm saving it up because it's going to be a big ticket item." And then Sheldon got sick. So that was 6 years. And while he was still living, then my mother got sick. So I went to her, and he took care of Perry and Chloe. You were home. And then she passed away. And then Sheldon passed away. And Heavenly Father is so good to me, preparing me for things like this. And then our Parker and Chloe. I have a strong testimony of the gospel. And I know without a doubt my Heavenly Father loves me. And I know these are grand and special spirits for him. And I know my Savior cheers me on and gives me strength. So that's where my source comes from, and why it's probably odd to you that I laugh and crack a joke when you try to comfort me. It's good. I'm good, and I hope my kids that's projecting onto you. My mother was big on writing positive affirmations, positive quotes, and scriptures that she loved. And she would leave them around, like in her bathroom and even in her closet. And so when she passed away, I was just going around gathering them. And I have used her notes, and I have used other scriptures of mine. And one of my favorites that are hanging on my mirror, and some of you have seen it in my post, is this: "Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest." And I believe that, and I live that I have that living in my heart. And I leave you with this: our hearts are broken, but our faith in Heavenly Father in Christ will mend us and continue to strengthen us. Again, thank you for loving us and for being here and supporting us. And I say these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Hello. I gotta tell this story, Connor, and I'm so sorry. You're gonna be mad at me. So football was probably way too important in our family with 3 boys, and Parker always had his Connor, and since they were the same size, and Parker was bringing Connor along, and when he was a sophomore in high school, he was getting ready for his sophomore year in high school. And Connor's a tender soul, and I worried about him today. And the football coach started to figure out that Connor just wasn't like everybody else. You couldn't scream at him and hit him harder. It didn't motivate him. It just made him sad. So Parker had Connor all tuned up. He's 15 years old. He's just a young puppy. He's got this baby face, and he's lining up on the line against guys with beards. So the first game rolls around, and Connor misses his first block, and the coach pulls him out and pulls him to the sideline, and I hope Coach Fair is here. And he grabs him by the face mask and screams at him, and then he shoves him in and says, "Get back in there." As Connor's running across the field, there's a tear that comes to his eye, and he gets in the huddle. Somebody looks at him and says, "Parker, tell your brother there's no crying in football." So that sums up the relationship between those 2 sweet boys. This has been a really rough week, and I think that everyone here deserves to hear a little bit of the details of what happened, because it was a special week, but it's a painful week. And so I'm going to share some of those with you today. These are not gospel details. These are our experiences. And so they're tender, but I want to share them with you. My friend Dale Hewish played the piano, and he came up. He was here last night, and he played the piano. And bless his soul, he has played the piano for us this week. We have sung Christmas songs at his house, and he's just rescued us. But he's a good example of this. He played the piano, and he's so talented. He's handsome. He's a genius, and he's got all kinds of talent. And I think, wow, what a great guy. And he'll play the piano when we leave this afternoon. And then I look at me and my 3 boys, and we're kind of the same. We don't have many of those great skills. But the one thing we have is the unique ability to surround ourselves with spectacular people. And I appreciate that everybody's here today on behalf of our people. And so the list is very long of thank yous, and we can never do it justice. But from the Cook family and from the Stott family, from the bottom of our hearts, we tell you, we needed you, we love you, we weep with you. This might be a bit unconventional, but if you are a family, parents, and you have lost a child, or if you're a mother and a young couple and you've lost a baby premature, would you please stand up? Yeah. Thank you. That's a tough group right there. And they have experienced some things that are very touching. So I would be a little bit remiss if I didn't just say some thank yous. I'd like to thank the people of the Morrison Ranch Ward, the people of our stake presidencies, our dear bishop and his wife. A special thanks to all of Parker's friends for being here. A thank you to Coach Walheim and Coach Fair, who just made their stamp, their DNA in those kids, in my kids. I'd like to thank my 2 daughters. I know I don't have daughters, but I don't call them my daughter-in-laws. I just call them my daughters. And I hope Miley finds out we're not a bunch of knuckle draggers. She might not go through with this pending wedding. But my daughters have carried this with grace. So we could not have made it without their strong shoulders to carry our weak men. And to Kit and to Jenny, it's a very difficult thing to lose a child. There was a doctor at the hospital, and his name was Dr. Ferrari, but I called him Dr. Moxie, because he just carried himself with a lot of moxie. And we had a very difficult exchange on the first night. I think he was just kind of summing me up as to what kind of a guy I was. I don't know if I passed the test or not. But he's on the final day when we had decided on a course of action with Parker, he said in that moxie voice, he said, "I've seen a lot of people come and go out of this hospital, but your crew did it with grace." And he said, "I have never seen a line from sunup to sundown of people streaming through here. Beautiful people that want to be here and part of this." And I said, "You should see the other 1,000 people that want to be here, that we've asked not to come. The line is endless." So thank you for that. I'm conscientious of the time, but I think Parker and Chloe deserve a few minutes on this afternoon. Again, I'm going to share some tender mercies with you. and this is my experience, and everybody in those rooms had their own experience. But as I'm sure most of you have heard, Parker, when he came into the hospital, he's pretty broken up. It was a rough sight. All the skin had been removed from his lower body or burned off. And it took about 2.5 hours to change his bandages. And he's a big guy, and his wounds just bled. And as I stood by his bedside, his sheets were saturated in blood most of the time. The hospital staff did a great job of keeping things pretty well covered. But I couldn't help thinking about the atonement of Jesus Christ and how he must have felt in the Garden of Gethsemane when he walked into that garden by himself and he wept from every pore. And I'm sure his clothes, white as they may have been, were just red with his blood. And I felt great strength from Parker's imagery, and I felt great comfort. But despite the pain, I believe in the healing power of the atonement. And I look forward to the glorious morning of the resurrection. I'd like to share a story, and it's not a story, it's a message. And it's unconventional, and it's darn crazy. And again, it's our experience. It's not doctrine, it's just our experience. Cleone is a Brazilian woman who lives in Salt Lake City, and her husband works with a good friend of mine named Rob. Rob was providing real-time information to this Brazilian fellow in Salt Lake who works with him because they were taking care of a work transaction all week. And fortunately for us, Rob was in the waiting room most of the several days with us. And her husband was translating to Cleone what was happening at the hospital and what was the scene. And I would like to share an event. And I do this with a tender heart because I want all of us to feel better about the current situation. And I want it to be a testimony of our conviction. Parker whispered the following message to this woman. The message was cryptic and would have only made sense to his family and to Kit's family. And I quote, she said, "Tonight as I stood in the kitchen, I thought about the mercy and love of the Savior, who gave this family a miracle that Parker and Chloe would be reunited. Then I heard a voice behind me, and I felt a hand on my shoulder, and it said, yes, it is a miracle. Soon after, he said to me again, yes, it's a miracle. And he continued. Mind you, this event was recorded Saturday evening, immediately or shortly thereafter, after Parker's passing. And then he said, thank you for your prayers. I could feel it in my soul. I know that you have never met me or my Chloe. But I need to say something to my mother and my family too. Make sure this message reaches them, so said Parker. And this is Parker's message. And I share it with you because you wouldn't be in this room if you weren't important to us. And he said, Mom, I am not afraid. Life has been so special. You prepared me to live the best and most beautiful journey. After the accident, all I wanted was to be with my Chloe, and now we are together with our family. So I won't share the rest of the message, but if you'd like to hear the rest of the message, I'd be glad to share it with you at another time. I thank everyone in this room. I'm grateful for the gospel knowledge that we have of eternal families. I think Parker and Chloe's two nephews summed it up best, Harvey and Owen. They said, there's Spider-Man, and if I could lift my other arm, and there's the Hulk, and then there's Parker. He was a beautiful son, a loving brother, but most importantly, a devoted husband. I believe in angels and miracles. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for all the messages that were shared today. I'm so grateful for Parker and Chloe. A couple observations and then a few thoughts, and we'll close up today. And I'll be quick, I promise. First observation, you should see the sneaker game going on behind the podium of all these boys that are coming up. Every color of Dunks and Jordans that you could imagine. It's pretty impressive. Second observation, these past 10 days have been very, very tender. I've got to know the Cook family better, the Stott family I know for better or worse, for several years. But during these last 10 days, and sitting with them in the waiting room, I saw parents. I saw Greg and Jenny, and I saw Kit stand when they shouldn't have been standing, lift when they shouldn't have been lifting, and lead when they shouldn't have been leading. Their strength was an example to me, and that comes from the Savior, and you heard that. Similarly, I saw their kids and their spouses bring life to a room that shouldn't have had that much life and joy. What a blessing that was, just to be a part of, just to sit back and witness it. Their family and their friends just rallying around them and just to be there with them. I'm grateful for them. That will always be with me, that memory and that observation. So a few thoughts. This has been hard, of course. I've talked to my wife many times, even when we were very first married, like, what are we going to do if something hard faces us? Are we going to pull together? Are we going to pull apart? Are we going to pull closer to God? Are we going to pull far away from God? We saw from the Stott family and the Cook family them pull closer to God. As I thought about this week and maybe a message to share, when I want to know and I want to pull closer to God, I get in the scriptures and I read and I let him talk to me. Whether it's the words I'm reading or the whisperings of the Spirit, I don't know, but I hear him and I get to feel of his love for me. So share with you a few thoughts from Romans. The Apostle Paul, he knew something of suffering, he knew something of loss, he knew something of pain. But the first thing he says, this is in chapter 8, the Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. The Spirit that we felt today, the Spirit that we felt today testifies that we're all brothers and sisters. We're all children of God. What a blessing. It doesn't matter our background, it doesn't matter who we are. We're all children of God. What a blessing. And the next verse says, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present time, maybe that we're going through today and have been for the past 10 days, are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. The glory or the joy. What we feel today, yeah, we feel that loss, and that's okay. It's good to feel that loss and to grieve and to mourn. But it can't be compared with the joy that lies ahead of us when we're reunited with our Savior, with our Father in heaven, with Parker and Chloe. The end of that same chapter is probably one you've heard before, and he says, it's the second thought, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. That love that we all feel for Parker and Chloe, hopefully that we all feel towards one another, can't separate us from that. The love of God we cannot be separated from, not in life, not in death. And Parker and Chloe are experiencing that now. Last thought from that same chapter. It says in verse 26, likewise the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought. We don't even know what to pray for. We're feeling so torn up inside. We don't even know what to say. And it continues with this. But the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. So when our words fail us, when we don't know what to say, we don't know what to pray for, the Spirit will speak our hearts. Trust in that. As we pray, and I hope we're all praying, you're reading the scriptures, all those things that bring us peace, know that the Spirit is communicating your heart's desire, that you're communicating perfectly with the Father in heaven that loves you. I'll close with my testimony that I'm grateful for the gospel. I'm grateful for the peace, the joy that it brings. I'm grateful for all of you and your strength. Grateful for the Stott family. Grateful for the Cook family. What dear friends. The family has asked that we close with a prayer, so we're going to do things a little backwards. Normally we would sing and then pray. We're going to do things a little backwards. So I'm going to lead us in a prayer. They've asked if you are able to, please take a knee. We'll take a knee right here. Offer our family prayer, as we're all one family. After which, please stand. We'll then have our closing hymn, which is Abide With Me, hymn number 166. Remain standing after the song, and we'll follow Parker, Chloe, and the family out of the building. Thank you. Our dear Father in heaven, we come before you this day so grateful for the Spirit that's been here with us, that unites us, that brings us closer. We're so grateful for Parker and Chloe and their lives, their examples, their love that they shared so freely with all of us. We're grateful for our Savior, for his sacrifice, and the life he lived that allows us to overcome death and to return to be with thee again. We offer up our hearts to you at this time in grief, but also in joy, knowing that they are together. Pray that thou bless them, bless their families. Help them in the coming days, weeks, months, and years, that they will feel peace. And as we miss Parker and Chloe, we know we can be with them again together. We love thee, Father. We've given so much, and this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.